fact that 15-fingered Sukuna right now can most likely one-shot any of the special grade characters or even the high tier characters such as Yuta, Yuki, Maki, or even Kenjaku or Kashimo is genuinely incredible. The fact that he is just so powerful that he has completely shattered the power scaling in Jujutsu Kaisen. It's just truly incredible. And if that sounds crazy, trust me, you're gonna want to watch this video because, man, there is some crazy evidence that heavily suggests that right now, if your name isn't Gojo, Yorozu, or Angel, you have no chance against even 15 fingers. And of course, wait, if you have not subscribed to the channel and you're a fan of Jujutsu Kaisen, do be sure to subscribe. Trust me, I have a ton of JJK content and a ton more coming. I have a lot of power scaling, what ifs, versus battles, and leaving a like does help the video out too. So if you did leave a like, you're an absolute legend. Thanks. And lastly, thank you to the special raid member of the channel, that guy Trey. Okay, now I know a lot of people actually want to discuss the whole output statement when Sukuna's fighting Yuji and Maki, because that is just such a controversial topic. And keep in mind, I have 6 different translations that I'm going to use for this video to actually just clarify all of my points and to give all of the perspectives that people have. So I will get into that, don't worry. But before I do, let us actually just discuss some recent things, such as him one-shotting Ryu. Now, in my video about how strong Yorozu is, I did realize a lot of people were actually downplaying this feat, and the issue that I have with it is that no one actually gave any evidence as to why this isn't a feat. Now, for the output stuff, again, I will get into that. That's a different thing, but at least specifically for that Ryu moment, just to quickly break it down. Ryu is someone who scales 1-to-1 of Rika in terms of strength, speed, power, durability, and this is something that's uncontested. It's been showed as clear as day. Not only do they both do the same amount of damage to each other, but they both tank an unguarded punch from each other, literally in the same way. Like, they both take similar amount of damage. And not only that, there was a moment when Yuta was actually fighting Uro and they were having a whole conversation before the domain clash, where off screen you can see Ryu and Rika actually are going hand to hand insanely evenly. And this is what was going on the entire time that conversation was happening. Now, whether this was going on for 30 seconds or a minute 30 seconds, those are the high and lowest balls that you can give, it still proves that they're 1-to-1, like seriously. And the reason this is impressive is, again, because Sukuna true perception blitzed Ryu. Because the issue is that Sukuna blitzed him not once but twice. And again, this is not a cleave feat. Both of these feats are not cleave and dismantle, but they are actually Sukuna's speed feats, and especially that second one, that mainly is because there are 3 forms of scaling in JJK: travel speed, combat/attack speed, and reaction speed. They vary greatly, but of course your reaction speed is something that's always the fastest, and travel speed is something that's always the slowest. It's just the fact that Sukuna blitzed Ryu's reaction speed, and keep in mind, even when characters are a lot weaker than other characters, they can always at least somewhat react to the last second, or at least somewhat aware of the fact they're getting blitzed. But this Ryu blitz, again, was a true speed blitz. The first time, when Ryu tries to strike first, as we see his hand raises first, Sukuna instantly reacts and counters immediately before Ryu realized what was going on. But the second time is just, dear god, this is so impressive. As Ryu tries to use a granite blast, before he even finishes his sentence, and most impressively, before he actually even processes that Sukuna's move, Sukuna is behind him. This is not a cleave feat. It's the fact that Sukuna has completely taken Ryu's back. He is behind him entirely, and if you look at Ryu's eyes and his reaction, Ryu, his brain has not processed what has just happened. And it's crazy because this is someone who scales 1-to-1 of Rika. And if you disagree with that, I beg you to reread Sendai, because GEGE could not have made it any more clear that Rika and Ryu in terms of physical stats are 1-to-1. So if Sukuna could do this to Ryu, what is he going to do to Yuta or Rika, or characters that scale to Yuta and Rika? So for example, Yuki and Kenjaku, unless you think these guys are actually way faster than Yuta, then hey, go ahead. But I know most people actually think Yuta is stronger than Yuki, at least slightly, and he's just slightly weaker than Kenjaku. They think they all scale relatively, or perhaps Kenjaku is a bit above them. But again, it's the fact that Kenjaku actually scales to Yuki in terms of speed. Like, he's not that much faster that he could just take her back and snap her neck before her brain has processed what has happened. So that's what I mean in the intro when I say that Ryu feat alone, that again, a lot of people in my Yorozu video was saying it's not impressive when we just saw someone who gave Yuta a fight of his life and was going 1-to-1 of Rika on multiple occasions get insta-blitzed, true perception blitz by Sukuna. He took his back completely, with or without the cleave. His speed is unmatched and unrivaled. So just by that alone, unless you can give me some really good arguments as to why this means he wouldn't blitz Yuta, as to why he wouldn't blitz any of the other high tiers or special grades in the series, please be my guest. And of course, there are always the 3 possibilities where 1, Yuta may have copied the 6 eyes or Limitless, which is a big stretch for some people, and most people actually think he can't copy the 6 eyes. Or the second possibility, which I really hope is true, is that since Yuta's a relatively new sorcerer, he's gonna get a big power up or another awakening, because he does have a lot of potential that he hasn't even begin to tap into since he's just such a fresh sorcerer. So I hope that's true. I hope he gets a massive power up and gets way stronger. Or the third possibility is just plot, where for no explainable reason, Yuta is going to be able to keep up with 15-fingered Sukuna, and the plot will just make him stronger because it's necessary for the story. And this is something that's called power creep and bad writing, and I pray that the last one isn't true, because GEGE has never done something like that. He's a very great and very consistent author in terms of character strengths, speeds, and powers, so I do hope Yuta just gets a big power. So again, it's not completely hopeless for Yuta, and for the sake of just how awesome it would look, I actually hope Yuta has a copied 6 Eyes and Limitless. Okay, I'm sorry, now that's just the Yuta fan of me speaking. Now to actually get into the juicy section, the output statements that Sukuna made. Now again, I will be getting into 6 different translations to get the most accurate representation of these lines as I can, because I know in my previous video, I actually didn't think it was that big of a deal. I only used 2 different translations, but even still, if you look in the comments of my Yorozu video, it is a toxic wasteland. You will need a hazmat suit to even traverse those comments. So I will be going into extreme depth to hopefully avoid that this time. And I will also give many different possibilities, so not just what I actually think is the case. Okay, now the first thing to clarify are that there are 2 different times when Sukuna talks about the output, and this is what people in my comments got very confused by. There is the statement that he first makes in the beginning of chapter 215, and there's also the statement that he makes at the end of chapter 215. And people actually mainly just look at his final statement because that is the last thing that Sukuna says, and they actually forget about the first one, or they actually misremember how the first one went. Now, the first statement, using the Viz translation, Sukuna says, "My cursed energy output is fluctuating. At its lowest, it's under 10%. So again, people actually thought 10% was the lowest. No, he's actually saying it goes even lower than that. And of course, the TCB really hits hard with the exact same thing. It's fluctuating, but he's suppressing my cursed energy output. At worst, I don't even have access to 10% of my maximum. And of course, the actual Japanese text and kanji, which is written by GEGE himself, so that is undisputable, doesn't use cursed energy output or attack energy output. It only uses cursed energy output, which is referring to his overall output. And in all 3 translations, he is saying it's actually below 10%. So that was a big misconception. People thought 10% was the lowest. It is below that. I'll say what I think, and I'll say what some people are saying. The way I'm interpreting this, which is with all translations and with GEGE's own writing, he is talking about Sukuna's overall cursed energy output. So he's not talking about specifically cursed. Again, he's just saying his cursed energy output overall. Now, I've seen some people actually try and say that in this moment, Sukuna is actually referring to his curse technique output, but GEGE just didn't write that. And to that, I have to say, you are actually adding text and you are just changing what GEGE has written or what Sukuna has said to fit your own narrative. I understand that if that's the case, it would make things a lot easier and it would make Sukuna a lot weaker, but the issue is that GEGE himself has written in 2 separate occasions in the same chapter. Once he writes cursed energy output just in general, and another time he specifies it is cursed techniques output. So the fact that clearly GEGE himself, the guy who created the series, is aware of the 2, and he has chosen to write 2 different things at 2 different points. Guys, I just really don't think the author himself is wrong here, because I've seen people actually say that Sukuna is referring to cursed technique output, which there is no evidence for. And by the way, if you are someone who believes that cursed energy output has no effect on your physical stats, please watch my How Strong is Ryu video and my Yuji versus Maki video, because there is an undisputable, just mountain-sized amount of evidence to straight up directly suggest that it does affect your physical stats in one way or another. And at the absolute bare minimum, it affects your physical attack power. So not cursed energy, but your physical strength and how hard you hit. At the absolute bare minimum, that's what it refers to, but personally, I do believe it means speed as well. But if you don't agree with the speed part, at the very least, I do at least understand that. Now to get into the second point. There's a line where people actually mistakenly believe that Sukuna's physical stats, so speed and strength, aren't affected because of a specific line Sukuna says. Sukuna says, though it seems he still has minimal influence over the flesh, I can still move unhindered. And in the Viz translations, he says, but physical movement seems to be fine. In the Japanese text, so as you can see here, he actually says it did affect him, but just not as much as the cursed energy effect. But interestingly enough, the actual Japanese text says there was an effect on the physical movement, which, my god, if that is true, which I guess it has to be because it's actually what GEGE wrote, the feats of Sukuna are just incredible for what he did to Yuki and Maki. And of course, in another translation, in the Japanese text, he says, but body movements not that bad compared to cursed energy output reduction. So this translation, different from the one before, which translates the Japanese text directly, completely confirms that at the very least his body movement was affected. And this is actually a mistake on the Viz and TCB, and my god, listen, I get Viz making mistakes. They have been making mistakes since as long as I've been reading JJK, but recently TCB has made some really bad mistakes, such as when they translated shrine as just malevolent shrine, and we actually got several high profile and trusted translations translators confirm that what GEGE wrote himself is shrine. But that's not actually the point here. The point that I'm trying to make is that Sukuna, when he says body movement and physical movement in all translations, he is clearly, and I mean very clearly, just referring to Megumi actually physically suppressing him or physically holding him back in the same way, let's say, Geto grabbed Kenjaku's neck. This is not referring to Sukuna's actual speed and power and strength. It's not actually referring to that, because energy output part was, but this one is just very clearly referring to Megumi actually messing with his physical movement, like actually taking control or messing with a bit or slowing that down. So I do hope I explained it as best as I could. Two very different things. Two things where if you just look at a glance, it may seem the same. If you actually read it properly in all translations, it's clear that these are two very different things. And now for the infamous last line, which has caused all of the issues here. And now, important to note, this was after he had fought Yuji and Maki, and this was well after his initial statement that he made of the 10%. So after fighting Yuji and Maki the entire time, in the viz, at the end of the chapter, he says, "This body resists me and drops cursed energy output when I'm hurting its allies in that case." So that was the viz. But the TCB actually says, "The rejection is stronger and he dampens the output of my curse technique." So in this case, Sukuna is now specifically clarified that it's not the overall output, and in the Japanese text, there's a clear difference between the two. In this case, he is saying specifically the curse technique. And the issue is, since Sukuna had actually said this at the end, people are very confused and assume that the first line, he actually means curse technique as well. And again, it was never said. And to actually get into @lightning446, which by the way is just a god tier translator on Twitter for JJK chapters and Chainsaw Man 2, so massive shout out to them. But they actually clarify that in this case, it's specifically for his curse techniques output. So it's not in reference to his reinforcement or his general attacks. This time, it's specifically just for the curse technique. And the reason why we know this is the case is because when Sukuna tried to dice up Yuji, his output was clearly far lower than it should be. Because let's be real, 15-fingered Sukuna would have minced Yuji up instantly, had he not been known. Okay, now that we're done with all of the output stuff, I just really want to get back into some really cool feats. So actually the previous output section really does explain and is just super consistent with what happened to Ryu. If 20 or less than 10% of Sukuna's output, which I do think affects physical stats, is able to 2v1 Maki and Yuji, excluding the one off guard hit Yuji had, and he actually manhandles them to an embarrassing extent. And I'm just referring to physical stats, so not if Maki used her sword. I mean, it was so disrespectful how he had one hand for each of them, and again, this is with all of his nerfs. So when you actually think about it, if Sukuna has 100% of his output or cursed energy or power or whatever, physical movement, if he's at 100% of 15 fingers, it does make sense why he's able to just completely blitz Ryu. And again, not the cleave feats, his actual feats where he moves behind Ryu faster than he can even react to or his brain can process. Surprisingly, super consistent actually with what happened with Maki and Yuji, because if you think his speed and strength weren't affected in the Maki and Yuji fight, Maki or Yuji could instant speed blitz Rika, Yuta, Uro, and Ryu, which is, I don't know, hey, maybe you think that's true. I know the Maki and Yuji fans won't be disagreeing with that, but I do not believe that's true, just want to clarify. And actually one interesting point I do want to bring up, earlier on in the video you may remember that I did say that the cursed energy output could just be a physical attack thing, because at the bare minimum that's concretely true. We know cursed energy output does affect your physical power and your strength, and of course I do think it's speed, but if people think it's just the power, which people say because Ryu could outpower Yuta, but their speeds were relative, this would actually line up pretty well with why Sukuna was just dogging Yuji and Maki in terms of speed, but his actual damage against them was pretty weak, where when he punched Maki, she honestly just tanks it like a champ. So again, this actually fits really nicely, where Sukuna's curse technique output is like less than 5%, again, all explaining the output section, and his actual physical output, so the amount he can actually damage with, not including his reinforcement, is fluctuating, so it could be 15%, and at times it's less than 10%. It would explain how he's just keeping up with Maki and Yuji with one hand for each of them with such ease throughout the entire fight. But of course, because his physical stats and his curse techniques were nerfed so much, he actually just had no way of damaging them or killing them, because all ways of attacking have been nerfed, and he would just have to defend, which actually does make sense with how he just never got hit, again, not including that off guard Yuji. Well, I should actually clarify, there was one hit he takes from Maki, and this is from Sukuna and Maki's first ever interaction. It is very important to note, this is before the fight gets serious, as we see see Maki actually says, mind if I speed things up, so she isn't even going at full speed. And also Sukuna, right after that punch, I'm blocking a push from Maki. He's literally saying, wow, you really are bored. So this was before not only Sukuna, but anyone was going seriously. It seems that they were all just testing the water. That's if you think output only affects physical stats, which at the very least it does, but you know my opinion, I think it affects speed as well. So I think Sukuna's speed is actually being nerfed here. Now, of course, some other incredible feats we have from 15-fingered Sukuna is him just absolutely molly-whopping and dog-walking Jogo. And I just want you to remember that in Sukuna's own words, the entire time he was just messing about and just mocking Jogo. So that's why he didn't just insta-kill him, because he really could have. And we have his feats with Mahoroga where he took no damage, which was again another Sukuna low diff where he took no damage at all. He did take a punch and he did say if he was in a cursed spirit body that the positive sword would have cut him, but it didn't, because he wasn't. And he takes that one Mahoroga punch like a champ. And I mean, to be honest, everything we've seen from Sukuna is just absolutely incredible. And I mean, in the past, I was someone who actually thought Yuta would put up a great fight against 15-fingered Sukuna, at least for his 5 minutes of his curse technique. And I even thought that maybe false-based Kashimo, so Kashimo without his true curse technique or his amped curse technique, which he currently has, I thought even that version of Kashimo might put up a decent fight against 15-fingered Sukuna, like maybe a mid-diff he would lose. But yeah, my god, we have all underestimated 15-fingered Sukuna so much, because none of us, and I mean none of us, were expecting 15-fingered Sukuna to be this much higher than the rest of the burst. Well, except the Sukuna fans. Okay, I know the Sukuna fans. Man, these are the one fans who I'm not getting angry comments from. Like, I'm getting angry comments from the Yuta, Yuki, Maki, Yuji, like all the other characters. I'm getting angry comments from them, but I realized specifically the Sukuna fans, oddly enough, they're very quiet. They're not saying anything. And that's because their king is on top right now. So congrats to you guys. Congrats to Blaziken. I know he's on that Sukuna agenda. It is what it is. One of the titles that I was thinking about making this video was like the true honored one, but I just want to clarify. My honored one is Gojo. Gojo is going to destroy 20-fingered Sukuna. When that happens, it's gonna happen. Trust me. Unless Sukuna, Urume, and Kenjaku pull some sneaky, underhanded tactic to like do a backstab on Gojo, or Gojo takes a hit because of a hostage or something. Like, excluding all of those sneaky tactics from Sukuna, because Sukuna is such a slimy guy, then in a true 1v1, you know, my goat Gojo, I got him on top. But yeah, regardless, it is going to be an extreme high diff, and at least the country is gonna get wiped if those two behemoths, so Sukuna, 20 fingers, and Gojo fight. I will say at the very least, if Sukuna has the 10 shadows in tandem with his own technique at 20 fingers, then okay, Sukuna will take it. I mean, he's just got too much going for him. He's got a technique that rivals the Limitless, which is the 10 shadows, and then of course his own technique, Shrine, which is another high tier technique. Maybe that's too much even for the Gojo fans. Maybe Gojo will pull it off. We don't know. We'll see. And if you're curious on how strong Yorozu is, I would actually recommend the video I uploaded previously. How strong is Yorozu? Trust me, you're definitely going to want to check it out. Especially if you're a Yorozu fan. Oh my god, she's one of my favorite characters right now. I just really, really, really like her. But I do promise the power scaling in that is not biased. I mean, hey, I really love Yuta, because even for myself, as much as I love Yorozu, I do not think she should be this strong. Like, honestly, the feats that she has right now and her being so much above Yuki, Yuta, and everyone else, at least feats-wise, if you don't think that's true, it's fine. I understand we all have our agendas and our favorite characters, but even I myself just am absolutely shocked, and I do not think she should be this strong. But it really does seem like the high-end era sorcerers like Angel and Yorozu are honestly in a tier below the honored ones, but above the special grade. The high-tier high-end era sorcerers are just monsters beyond belief, because again, Angel had that curse technique, Jacob's Ladder, where it covered an entire city in cursed energy and light, or at least a big portion of the city. I mean, it was incredibly massive, and it made that beam of light at the end. Keep in mind, this is just one technique of many that Angel has, and this was also used from Hana, not Angel, who is borrowing the technique. So yeah, like it's crazy. These high-end era sorcerers are just something else, man. But hey, if you've watched this far and you're a Jujutsu Kaisen fan, come on, you gotta subscribe. Trust me, I got a lot of JJK videos just like this, like a lot of versus battles, power scaling, analysis videos, and of course live streams, like live reviews and reactions and such. So hey, if you're a JJK fan, you're not gonna regret it, and I really do appreciate it if you do subscribe. And of course, please be sure to leave a like, as it does help the video out. And I get that you're not going to agree with everything here. There's gonna be some points you disagreed with. That's completely fine. These are just my interpretations of how things happened. If you at least agree with most of what I said, then I'm honestly happy with that. But yeah, if there's one or two things you didn't agree with, hey, that's cool. And of course, thanks to all of the channel members. You can see your names on the screen right now. You guys are the true legends here. Thank you. It really does mean a lot. And that's pretty much it. Take care and have a nice day.